Parkography is sponsored by Slinky Stove. It's the only patented collapsible fire pit that stays intact whether expanded or packed in its included carrying bag. It's perfect for RVs, car camping, or even backpacking into public lands with their smallest stove. Slinky Stove expands in seconds with smokeless airflow rings and a clean burning fire. The stainless steel pit is inexpensive and packed with extras like a lid, which doubles as a ground protector, and a cooking grate, creating a 3-level cooking system that gives you flexibility, whether it's morning coffee or evening campfire chili. And with contained ash, cleanup's quick and clean, just the way it should be on public lands. Head over to slinkystove.com to order yours today, or click the link in the description for this episode. Welcome to Parkography, the podcast that uncovers the rich histories, vibrant ecosystems, and inspiring human stories behind America's public lands. I'm Jason Epperson, and today I'm thrilled to share a conversation with two remarkable photographers, Chris Greer and Paul Daniel, the creators of the PBS series Viewfinders. Viewfinders captures the magic of America's landscapes through the lenses of these two passionate photographers, blending stunning visuals, immersive soundtracks, and meaningful storytelling. Each episode follows Chris and Paul as they explore breathtaking locations, connect with local experts, and share insights about the history, ecology, and preservation of the places they visit. It's a series that inspires viewers to get outside, discover the natural world, and maybe even pick up a camera themselves. Along with being an award-winning photographer, Chris Greer is a professor at Georgia College and the best-selling author of Georgia Discovered, Exploring the Best of the Peach State, and Naturally Georgia, From the Mountains to the Sea. He has traveled the globe capturing incredible landscapes, but the beauty of his home state of Georgia keeps calling him back. Paul Daniel is one of Atlanta's premier photographers. His spectacular city and landscape work has been featured by major brands like Federal Express, British Airways, and Marriott properties, as well as Atlanta TV stations. In this episode, we dive into their creative journeys and the behind-the-scenes challenges of shooting a TV show about national parks and American landscapes, and their shared mission to inspire a deeper connection with the natural world. So whether you're a photographer, a nature lover, or just someone who loves a good adventure, this conversation's for you. Let's jump in. Chris and Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very
much.
I'd love to start by going back and beginning with, if you could tell me about where you first intersected each with public lands. What got you into the world of national parks and outdoor exploring?
Well, I can say for me, it started with photography. I like to tell people I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. And with that comes I guess the lack of outdoors experiences and stuff like that. But once I got into photography, I had to hike to get to certain, sites that I wanted to take photos of, waterfalls and cliffs and stuff like that, and mountaintops. And it just got me out there. Got me out there hiking on Saturday mornings when everyone else was still asleep. So yeah, it was photography.
Chris?
I started at a young age. I mean, I've always loved the outdoors. My dad would take me camping on some land that we had in the family back in Tennessee. And so when I was really young, I spent time outside. And then we took some family trips and went to a variety of places throughout the U.S. And then as I grew older, I continued to build trips around beautiful outdoor destinations. And I remember vividly a cross-country motorcycle trip that I took with my wife in my mid-20s. And we did almost 10,000 miles over the course of the summer. We hit up so many national parks between Georgia and the West Coast and back. I would guess it was 12 to 14 national parks we hit during that trip. And it was just also beautiful. So I've got a long-standing relationship with these beautiful spaces here in the United States.
So where Paul got into public lands through photography, did you get into photography because of those adventures?
I got into photography. I think it goes back to my my youth, my upbringing, and being outside a lot. My dad was a photographer, and he handed me a camera and some rolls of film when I was 12. And from that point on, I have just had an interest in photography. And so he taught me some things, and I shot a lot of rolls of film and took a lot of bad pictures. But over the years, I just continued to enjoy being outside and taking photographs. And so I think those two, there's like a harmony there, especially if you enjoy landscape photography, because that interest in taking beautiful photographs will motivate you to go find beautiful places to take those photographs. And of course, the national parks have that in spades. And so it's been just kind of a lifelong thing for me, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
And Paul, how did the two of you meet? Was it because of the show, or did you guys meet before that?
Chris was actually writing a book about what was it, Chris? The different spots of the state of Georgia.
I was doing a travel book called Georgia Discovered that involved me writing the book, but also taking pictures. And I knew Paul had all of the great spots in Atlanta. So I reached out to him, and that was the first time. We had connected on Instagram before that just because of our
Right.
photography. But I reached out to Paul, and you were just like, I'll meet you. Let's take some pictures together. And that's how that
Yeah.
started.
The first time I think we had like kind of a personal connection through Instagram was a tripod some years ago that he recommended to me, and I still have that tripod. It's still good. So
So you're both well-established photographers, and somehow the idea for a show that covers not just visiting public lands, but doing that through a camera lens came about. How did Viewfinders come about in the first place?
There's an interesting story there. I was really getting into my photography. I'd written a couple of books. Was growing pretty strong social media following. And so a friend of mine up in North Georgia, he and I started kind of doing a little YouTube work, as so many people do in the world of content creation nowadays. And one day we were up on the Appalachian Trail at Hogpen Gap, it was really, really cold. It was February, and I was chilled to my core. And he dropped me back off at my cabin up there, and I went inside. I turned on the fire. I turned on the television. I poured a decent sized glass of bourbon, and I sat down on the couch. And over the next 20 to 30 minutes, there was like this, almost like it coalesced. It all just kind of came together. All of those things. I was warming up, and what was on TV, it was Georgia Outdoors. And that is a Georgia PBS show that's aired for well over a decade, probably 2 decades here. And it's about all of these beautiful places in Georgia. And the more I watched it, and I'd watched it before, I started to think, you know what? We could do something like this. We could put together a television show that takes photographers to really gorgeous locations in search of images and document the adventures we have along the way. And also, you know, educate the viewers about why these places are so important and why they should be protected. And that just kind of all started flowing through my brain. And I had a contact at GPB here in Georgia, and I sent her an email. And this was back in the days of COVID, and just said, I have a pitch for a TV show. I was wondering if I could talk to you all about it. And I didn't hear anything back at all for about 3 to 4 days. And I just was thinking, oh, they're just not interested. And then out of the blue, I get an email, and she's basically like, yeah, I'll set it up. And so she set up a Zoom call with her and the vice president of programming and me. And I pitched that show idea to them. And all I wanted them to say was, make a pilot, bring us a pilot, show us what the TV show is going to look like, and we'll go from there. And I was going to consider that a win. But they loved the idea so much that they said, bring us 5 episodes, which is basically half a season. I was completely blown away, because in that moment I became a TV producer and host, and I had done neither of those things up until that moment. So I had no background in it, but I had to quickly learn what went into it, and it's a lot.
For so many of us, I think PBS has been this touchstone of it's been a place where a lot of us were introduced to at least travel. And at least it was for me, growing up in the days before the internet, where I would watch a lot of people like Rick Steves and local travel. There's this Main Street show that happens around here right now that goes around to Midwestern towns and covers that kind of stuff, that the stuff that you don't find on cable television anymore, which is sort of going through its own thing. But yeah, I think PBS has always been sort of a place where like you have the time and space to sort of build this broader story without the interruptions of commercials and just sit on a Sunday morning and see beautiful places. And I think that's what's so great about your show is that, it's very accessible for, obviously it's really interesting if you're a photographer, but that certainly doesn't need to be where you approach something like this. You don't even need to be somebody that goes to these places, but in order to just have the ability to see them and appreciate them, preaching to the choir here, but it's such a benefit of something like public television. So how did the process then go of, okay, we're doing this. What the heck do we start with? How do we begin approaching what this show looks like and where do we go?
Well, a lot of help from people that do television shows like what you mentioned. And they provided me with guidance and talked to me about permitting and just broadcast quality control and standards. There's just so much that goes into it. And I always talk about like YouTube content and what it takes to put together a YouTube show and then what it takes to put together a show for television. And it's just two completely different animals because there's just so many different little nuanced pieces to the puzzle before it can air on TV. So I learned a lot. There's a lot online, guidance documents, things like that I poured through. There's a program or a producer's handbook from PBS that's like 150 pages long, poured through that. But really, so much of it was talking to others who have done this for years. And GPB, which is our presenting station, they're the PBS channel here in Georgia. They were also very, very helpful in answering my questions because, yeah, I had to learn. It was almost like we were building the plane as we were flying it in a lot of ways. And I look back at those early episodes and I just think of how far we've come with this new season, which is by far our strongest yet. And then I also think about what's ahead, and maybe in a few seasons, I'll look back to this season and think, wow, we've come so much further again, So I think Paul and I both want to just raise the bar every single season and make it better and better as our audience continues to grow.
Well, let's talk then about sort of what the nuts and bolts of this thing is photography. Paul, as somebody who photographs nature in an age where everybody's got, they've got a camera on their cell phone. Many people have seen a lot of these places, more and more places because of Instagram, because of YouTube. More and more places have been found. They're more easily accessible to view imagery of online. How, as a photographer now, do you approach the world and find new ways to show our planet, and particularly our country in a new light?
Interesting question, because you can even add in one case, I mean, you can also add like AI in there. So many people can create a lot of these photos just by typing in a message to a program. I think what does it for me, though, is there is a large community of people who appreciate natural art and just appreciate nature in itself. So like for myself, I can't get tired of looking at great pictures. I know I have access to them on Facebook. I know I can get it on Google Images. I know I can see many places through Instagram. And the casual people who are just into social media and showing where they've been, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to do much to keep their attention because they're on to the next thing right after they see what you have to offer. but there's a large community of people out here who appreciate the art of photography, who appreciate what it takes to get out there, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning before sunrise to set up at a location to get a shot. They appreciate the post-processing effort that you put into, cleaning up your images. You can have the same shot from the same place, but if I go there at a different time of day than you've been there, it can look totally different. I mean, sunrise outside of my own house looks completely different than if you come there at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. 12 o'clock, middle of the day is just a regular house, not a big deal. But to see that same house with maybe a living room light on or a bedroom light on, kind of dark, some ambient light coming from the inside of the house, and then the sun rising behind it, it's totally different. And like I said, with the community that's out there that appreciates just natural art and just photography, just do your best to get a great shot. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be there to look at good photography.
Is AI changing the way photographers look at the art they create? So for instance, I know, obviously people can type in words into ChatGPT and just come up with an image, but that's not the only way that people are using AI with photos. One major way that I can think of is to sort of take photos that they've taken and make them, look ultra pristine and perfect, and doing everything from completely changing the sky to removing, people and backgrounds and all that sort of stuff. Besides the obvious with the altered reality of AI, is there sort of a reaction in the photography world, or do you see one coming where photographs are maybe it's less about making the place look perfect and showing some of the natural mistakes and oddities and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think there is. But again, I think that, and I think Chris may have some words about this too, because we always talk about the effect that AI is having on just regular photographers and audience that we cater to. But I do think that there's a large enough audience of people who, like I said, appreciate the art and can almost always tell when something was AI generated, as opposed to it just being a natural image that may have some Photoshop and Lightroom enhancements. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think most pro photographers, if they really look at an image closely, they can start to pick up on some little things that just don't seem right. And there's just some tells still when it comes to AI generated images or even AI enhanced images. But with that said, it can be hard to tell on social media because the image is so small on Instagram. You can't really see the fine details when it's shrunken down like that. I'm back and forth on AI and how much a photographer can use it before it really doesn't represent a photograph anymore. It's just a digitally created and enhanced image. If a photographer wants to do sky replacements and things like that, okay. But I just think they should share that with their audience. Like, I used a different sky, or this is a composited photo, because otherwise it just doesn't feel like it's truthful. It doesn't feel like they actually captured that image. They kind of created and crafted an image from lots of different resources, and it's not what they actually experienced that day. And I do think that the show and the audience appreciates what Paul and I share, because we can't, I don't do that anyway, but we can't do that on the show. Even if we wanted to, they can clearly see where we are, what the conditions are like, if the light is good or bad, because we're talking about it with the audience and sharing that. And then we pop our images up. So I think the show is very, very authentic in so many different ways, including our photography and our experiences as we travel and all of those elements.
There is a flip side to the AI usage as well for photographers. So, for instance, Chris and I, are in a national park, and there are a lot of people that are around us when we're shooting. You want to take those people out of the photograph. And AI, in the last few years, has really come a long way in being able to manipulate the pixels of a photo to get the people out, but keep, the background or the actual item that you need to stay in the photo, to have it remain there. So there are some good aspects to AI. But I think the problem that most photographers will have is the creating a complete image, or maybe like 70 or 60% of your image through the use of AI. That there might be an issue.
Yeah, some of those things were things that you would have done in the past, right?
Right.
They're just harder to do. They're a little easier now.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. The playing field's a little more level for the casual photographer. They don't have to have necessarily really great Photoshop skills anymore
Right.
to take power lines out of their photo, or some people that had walked into the frame that they didn't notice.
And there's a great accessibility into that, I think, too, for the amateur photographer to be able to not have to focus on it. And we often get frustrated with technology and think technology is going to eat into XYZ, and it's a tale as old as time that the television is going to kill radio, and radio is going to kill newspapers, and so on and so forth. But it just increases the amount of content and the complexity and the availability out of it. And I think still the cream rises to the top. As you can see through the wonderful images you both have created, both on the show and elsewhere, when you figure out you're going to focus an episode on a certain location. I was just watching the Grand Tetons National Park episode. Selfishly going to Grand Tetons this summer, and that's one of the most photographed parks. It's easy to park on the road and get some incredible photos of the Tetons. How do you approach doing something not just for photography purposes, but for the show, that's going to show people something that's a little different, and give them sort of an education and a background of something they might not have known before?
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time leading up to these shoots, researching and lining up our days and our schedules and the experts that we're going to meet with and the guide that's going to take us places. And so certainly when we go to a lot of these locations, we do want to get those icons like the TA Molten Barn and Jenny Lake and Jackson Lake in Grand Tetons. But we also like to do images that people don't quite know where we are located and they haven't seen that place before. We try to do that everywhere we go. Like when we went to Acadia, I think Paul and I both got some really cool images that were not at Thunderhole or on the top of Cadillac Mountain. And that's kind of nice for us to kind of get outside the box and not just do what so many other photographers have done. And I think it's kind of nice for the audience to see new areas of these parks that they don't see much on Instagram or on their travel websites. And so it just kind of gives them a bigger picture, a fuller picture of just how special these places are.
I think a key part to that too is, we get an idea of some of the images we want to take by obviously, checking Instagram and Facebook and maybe even Google Images. But when you get to a location, see if you can find a local. The locals are usually your best resource, I think, to finding, that behind the fence thing that no one else knows about. Even if it's not for photography, you might learn something from the secret place that they may show you. But I say this because we had a guide in Wyoming and Grand Tetons. This guy was just amazing. I mean, it seemed like every secret location that was out there that no one knew of, he was able to take us there. We got some shots, I think, from locations that, haven't been shot before. I remember one shot in particular. I don't know if you remember this one, Chris, but the one with the boneyard where the mountains were in the background. I mean, that was one that our guide, that area, he suggested to us. And it's not one that you see often from the Grand Tetons. So I would say, when you're out eating breakfast, getting that bagel or whatever, see if there's a local that's around there who can say something to you about, a secret spot that you might want to try out.
Yeah, sometimes they keep those close to the vest because they don't want people to know. But that's another thing we balance too with the show is we don't want to create a swarm of people to some new location because we kind of shared the coordinates or the exact spot on the show. So we don't always, publicize where we are, but we just say we're in the park or near the park. But there's these parks, this country, there's so much beauty. And honestly, I mean, the national parks are national parks for a reason, but we don't just go to national parks. We go to state parks. We go to national forests. We go to all types of locations, and there's just absolutely spectacular beauty.
Besides talking to locals, which I think is a fantastic tip, what tips would you guys have for not even just aspiring photographers, but just people traveling and taking photos of their adventures? Give us a few photography tips. I should mention here too that the show is sponsored by photography brand Sigma. Give them some tips about how to improve their sort of casual photos.
I'll let you start, Paul.
For me, that would probably start with that cell phone that we all have. I'd probably examine things like composition, how to create a good shot or a shot that people will remember, not just a cell phone shot. I'd probably concentrate on composition and lighting. Learn to master composition and learn to master lighting. And I think you'll take your photography definitely to the next level, especially lighting. Like I said, it's different seeing a location during sunrise or sunset as opposed to, midday. The sun's a lot harsher. There's a different kind of hue that's spread across the subject of your photo during sunrise, during blue hour, golden hour. So I'd say concentrate more on when you're taking those photos and how you're taking composition and lighting.
And of course, when you're visiting a park during those times when, the early morning and the early evening, there's a lot fewer people around too, right?
Yeah. And see, that's another thing. Get out early and you'll get the composition you want. I mean, that's when you want to be out anyway, because the light's going to be better. Get out early. Go back into the hotel after you get your photos and rest up after you get your shots. But that'll help.
Yeah, I'll totally reiterate what Paul just said. I agree. Composition and light are so important. And those are things that you can really work on with just your phone. You don't have to make that investment into a nice camera system. And you can get some great images. I think we all have gotten great images from our phones. It's pretty amazing. But it is nice if you get into photography, if you travel a lot and you want to capture images that you want to hang on your wall and share with friends and be more purposeful and have more control over your images, to upgrade to a dedicated camera, to upgrade to different lenses for different, times and places. Sigma was wonderful and provided us with lenses. We did the entire season, all of our images, all of the video shot was all using their lenses. And having that flexibility to zoom in on a moose in the Tetons, but also get a wide shot when we were at String Lake and the cathedral group was towering over us. I mean, having that flexibility, you just don't get it with a phone. Yeah. But certainly early mornings, it was really kind of nice. We were in the Tetons in July, which is a peak travel time for that area. Our sunrise shoots, it was just us. Pretty much every single time we shot a sunrise, there wasn't anybody else around. And so that's pretty amazing in a national park as well known as Grand Teton to still have these amazing places to yourself. Set an early alarm and get up and you'll see some magic happen.
Well, to give folks more of an idea of what the show's like, could each of you give me a place or a moment from the last couple seasons that really sticks out for you as something that was just a really special experience for you?
Blue Ridge Parkway last season. We went out there for a sunrise and the light that, Chris, do you remember that amazing light that we had at the top of it? It was unbelievable.
It was phenomenal.
We were I forgot the elevation. I can't remember how high we were at that point, but there were clouds like on our level and below us. And then there was a mountain range above the clouds. So it looked like the mountains were like in a sea or in an ocean of clouds. And the sunlight that was just hitting so well. If you haven't seen that episode, I'd probably check that out on the PBS app. But the Blue Ridge mountain location, that episode there was just an amazing sunrise. And it's one that out of everything we shot, that one sticks out of my mind. And when you watch that episode, you'll see what I'm talking about, because I think our cameraman, Nathan, he captured it beautifully.
He did. That was a really special one. It's really hard for me to say one particular time stands out. I will say I thoroughly enjoyed our New England episodes. We actually filmed three. We filmed in the Green Mountains of Vermont and the White Mountains of New Hampshire, and then at Acadia National Park, all during peak fall color. And it's just so beautiful up there. Paul laughs because I said quintessential New England at least 5 or 10 times during various photography outings that we went on. But we just saw such a range of beauty, and the colors were just vivid. And we had fog, and we had rain and mist and blue skies and everything during that. It was just a photography lover's paradise. And I think those episodes, when people watch them this season, I think people will really appreciate it. And it'll probably motivate some people to get up to New England in the fall sometime soon.
So that's upcoming. We're in season 3 now. You've got a couple episodes out. All the episodes are available, by the way, pbs.org. Those are episodes that are coming up this season, because that's what I was about to ask you. What can we look forward to the rest of this season?
This season was like a huge jump, a total difference in views than we presented last year. And I think, and Chris can probably attest to this too, it's probably because of it is because of the different, states that we visited this year. Chris, where have we been? Wyoming, New Mexico,
Utah, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Georgia coast. We wanted to create a diverse geography for the audience to enjoy, because we were a regional show. We were a GPB based television show until we got picked up for national distribution. And so we were filming everything here in Georgia and Western North Carolina, just this kind of general area that surrounds the Atlanta market. And once we got picked up, I realized we need to make a national show. We have a national audience now. And so this season is where we started that process. And it's much more complex. We're flying places now. We're setting up all of this travel and the logistics. And we have a TV show car that's provided to us by a Subaru dealership. And I shipped that car to New England so we could have it when we're filming up there. So there's just so many different pieces in that puzzle, but the result is some absolutely beautiful scenery, some great photos, some great adventures. And I also think it's more relevant to a national audience because we're all over the place, and that's going to continue in the coming seasons.
Chris, besides the beautiful locations and the incredible photography, music is a big part of this series as well. Talk to me about how you pair music with these beautiful locations and how you sort of find the right stuff to go through that process of making it happen. I'm sure that's a challenge.
I love music. I've loved music from a very young age. And I think music, when you listen to a song and it's powerful, it can create emotions. And I think when you pair a song with some really beautiful visuals, it can just enhance the experience for the viewer. And so every season, starting the very first season, I've worked with musicians and gotten music and songs that I think help create and represent the emotions that we were feeling when we were out taking pictures, when we were on our adventures, when the weather had turned bad, or we didn't get the shots we wanted, or we ended up with this beautiful, stunning sunrise and everything just came together for us. And so I've got artists on for this year that span a big range. So I have everything from Lord Huron to Bon Iver, to Ray LaMontagne, to even Van Morrison makes an appearance this season. And so if you want to maybe discover some new songs, the show can be a great way to do that. We even have a Spotify playlist that people subscribe to. But I do really like working with different songs and blending those into the edit. And I have somebody helping me. Sarah Long is like my kind of sound design person, and she helps with getting that music in the right spot and making sure it goes really well with the scene.
I think music sort of to any sort of travel video, it sort of works the same way that photography does for me. I think photography isn't just about showing an accurate representation of what you saw, because frankly that's impossible. But to more share the feeling of what it was like to be there at that moment, or a different feeling if it ends up being that, but to share that just deep connection that you've got with what's going on. And music does such a wonderful job of that when it comes to video.
The vast majority of our audience, they are not photographers, or they are just casual photographers with their phones. They enjoy the travel aspect of this show, the adventures, the beauty, and the new locations that we bring the audience to every episode. Yes, Paul and I both teach kind of what we're doing and talk through it to the audience. But at its core, I think this is a love letter to the beauty of the planet. We're, of course, showcasing the United States, but we have plans to showcase other places in the world as well. And I think at its very, very foundation, it's just finding and capturing that beauty and sharing it with our audience.
Yep.
Well, Chris Greer and Paul Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. This is the show is fantastic, and congratulations on it. And I'm excited to see the rest of this season.
Thanks
you very
for having
much
us on the show.
Yes, we're so happy to be here.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Parkography. A huge thank you to Chris Greer and Paul Daniel for sharing their time, their stories, and passion for the natural world. If you want to see their stunning work for yourself, be sure to check out Viewfinders on PBS, sponsored by Sigma, and follow them on Instagram. I'll drop their handles in the episode description so you can connect with them directly. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow park lovers. You can also find Parkography on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more stories from America's public lands. This episode of Parkography was sponsored by Slinky Stove. Head over to slinkystove.com to order yours today, or click the link in the description for this episode.